So we all know where the Wuhan virus came from.
But I chaired a commission for the Lancet for 2 years on COVID. I'm pretty convinced it came out of U.S. lab biotechnology, not out of nature. Just to mention, after 2 years of intensive work on this. So it's a blunder.
So that's what happened. And that's the official, that's from the Lancet, right? The most prestigious, blah, blah, blah. That guy studied it intensely for 2 years. Jeffrey Sachs. It came from U.S. biolabs.
And by the way, Jon Stewart looked at it for 2 seconds and could tell that it came from the lab.
That's right.
It really...
Anybody who's looked at this knows it came from a lab.
It's like internet censorship. We all knew.
And the reason why I say this is because the New York Times is doing it again. They're lying to you. Just straight up making stuff up. The New York Times, the origin of the COVID pandemic, what we know and don't know.
Here's what I know. If you're even saying it's a possibility, I mean, it is that. Because low confidence, why are you saying it? Why are you even saying it?
Wait till you see. Wait till you see what they say. A team of researchers has added fuel to the bonfire by presenting data at a World Health Organization meeting suggesting a wild animal known as a raccoon dog.
Why don't you just say man, bear, pig? Why don't you do that? Just go full South Park and say man, bear, pig was sold.
A raccoon. They're blaming it on a raccoon dog now, Kurt.
My God, that's even filthier than a dog or a raccoon.
There was a raccoon dog at that same wet market. It was a raccoon dog.
God, why were these Chinese?
If I could write this funny, I'm not kidding, by the way.
Yeah.
If I would have came up with that, imagine if out of nowhere I would have just said, I think it's a raccoon dog.
Well, it's a good alternative to the racist lab leak idea that an Asian bought some kind of strange Pokemon.
This is so much less racist. It's so much less racist. The scientists suggested that the raccoon dogs could have served as a so-called intermediate host for the virus.
It could have, but it didn't.
So-called.
What?
Why would you put so-called?
Because I think that also doesn't really happen like that, too.
Anyway, that development arrives less than 3 weeks after reports that the Energy Department had concluded, albeit with low confidence, that an accidental laboratory leak in Wuhan most likely caused the coronavirus pandemic.
Why are they even saying this is my question. That either means they know something more and they're like, don't blame us, right? Or what is a possible reason to say that and then say low confidence? What's the reason?
In samples that they want to muddy the waters. They can't. They know they can't keep saying that it didn't happen because then no one would believe them at all. But there's still enough people who want to not believe it, and so they give them something to not believe in.
Right. So between that and politics, girl, I'm covered for all my stupid needs.
So this is what that is. This is keeping the people I went to dinner with the other night happy because it confirms their biases. Trump wasn't right. That's what this is.
Oh.
In samples that came back positive for I want to read you this article because it's funny. So I'll read a little bit too much of it, but every paragraph is funny.
We gotta go hunting for a coon dog.
In samples that came back positive for the coronavirus, the international research team found genetic material belonging to animals, including large amounts that were a match for the raccoon dog. Three scientists involved in the analysis. Now, I just want to remind you that Dr. Fauci, the first two scientists to report back to him from China, and they said, yeah, it's probably a lab leak. He then gave those guys $9 million, and they completely switched their story 3 days later and said, nah, couldn't be a lab leak. And then they wrote their bullshit article in Science magazine or Nature that said it wasn't a lab leak, and that was a conspiracy theory. So just so you know, that's how Fauci corrupts science. He's not science. He is corrupted science. And so Fauci knew at the beginning, in February in 2020, Fauci knew that the virus came from the research that he was funding.
I don't think people know that Fauci controls
He controls all the research money in the country.
Like all of it.
Yeah. When Moderna had to give $400 million to Fauci, that's $500 million. He then spreads that out to to universities.
Well, I
And so-
am science.
and so now universities owe him, just like that's why Chuck Schumer and Mitch McConnell are the leaders, not because they're leaders, but because they have the most money, because they're the most corrupted, and then they give that money out to all the other politicians so they can go run their campaigns. The same thing with Fauci. Fauci's the most corrupted. They give him all the money. He then spreads it out, and he keeps control over those people. So you do Fauci's bidding, or you don't get money to work. The jumbling together of genetic material from the virus in the animal does not prove that a raccoon dog itself was infected. No, it does not. No, it doesn't. Thanks for saying that. It doesn't.
What? A jumbling together?
So this thing that we just said doesn't prove anything. In fact, it doesn't really say anything. That's what this is saying. I know, but you want us to think. Okay. And even if a raccoon dog had been infected, it would not be clear that the animal had spread the virus to people. Another animal could have passed the virus to people, or someone infected with the virus could have spread the virus to a raccoon dog. So what is the point of this article?
This isn't even
the
low
point
confidence.
of this article is to give people who don't want to believe science something to believe in. People who still want to hate on Trump and want to like Fauci. What else is this?
You know what this is for? This is for Stephen Colbert to make a joke about a raccoon dog. And not know anything else about what they wrote.
That's right.
You definitely shouldn't be reading it. You see that? Wait for Colbert to read the headline to you.
The whole point of this thing is to try to make you think that a raccoon. If you look at the beginning of the article, it says how a raccoon dog did this, and here they spend the rest of the article telling you, I don't think that it's happened. What?
I've never heard of a raccoon dog before this day, by the way. What the fuck is a
in my
raccoon?
life.
Never heard of a raccoon
What the
dog.
hell
Well, I
is
never heard of a pangolin either.
I have heard of that, never as a disease thing.
So their own article, this isn't that article about how it's a raccoon dog, but they go, but it's probably not. Another animal could have passed the virus to people, or someone infected with the virus could have spread the virus to the dog. The raccoon dog. But the analysis did establish that raccoon dogs, fluffy animals that are related to foxes and are known to be able to transmit the coronavirus, deposited genetic signatures in the same place where genetic material from the virus was left, the three sites. So what they're saying is that the raccoon dogs shit.
That's what that is, right?
Yes.
He ate something and shit
He
it
ate
out.
something and shit it out. That's where the genetic signatures. They deposited genetic signatures. They took a shit.
I feel like they're depositing a genetic signature into my mouth right now.
But it makes it sound like it's sciencey, right?
Genetic
if you say
signatures.
deposited genetic signatures.
When they have to express a gland in an animal and they're just jacking it off, like that kind of that language.
That evidence, they said, was consistent with a scenario in which the virus had spilled into humans from a wild animal. Oh my God. And by the way, none of this stuff is in a... Where did this come from? I don't even know where this came from because it's not in some peer review. It's not in a study that's published. It's not in peer reviewed. I think it was a couple of guys said this at a meeting at the WHO, and then I don't know where it came from.
What a scoop! Boop, boop, boop,
Yep.
boop, 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 boop.
Scientists who have studied the genetics of the virus and the patterns by which it spread say the most likely cause is that the virus jumped from live mammals to humans. No, they don't. Discredited morons who are still pushing propaganda funded by Big Pharma and Fauci say that.
Yeah, what science is? You're not even saying
Which scientists who have studied? What's their names?
because I know the ones that have studied that said the opposite of that.
I know the head of the CDC at the time of the outbreak, he said he immediately looked at the virus, saw that cleavage site, and said, yeah, that doesn't happen in nature. This was manufactured in a thing. Just like Jeffrey Sachs studied it for 2 years at the Lancet. This is manufactured in a lab. Scientists who have studied the genetics of the virus say that it came from a lab, just like I showed you. So they're still doing that. But other scientists say circumstantial evidence points to the virus having escaped from a lab, possibly the Wuhan Institute. You mean possibly? They're saying it.
Is there more than one lab there?
There is another. Yes, there are more labs there. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Lab mistakes do happen. Yeah, they happen so often that they shut down the labs doing that gain-of-function research in the United States, which is why Fauci had to criminally go around the regulation that stopped him and fund it through a sub-thing over and have that work done in China.
Am I wrong that Trump lifted some barrier to doing that as well?
I don't know. That's not what I heard.
Oh, okay. Just curious.
It might be. So here's the lab mistakes that they talk about. In 2014, after accidents involving bird flu and anthrax, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention tightened. Oh, really?
They didn't tighten that hard, huh?
Remember Robert F. Kennedy was on the show the other day and he talked about that. He also talked about the anthrax. There was 2 senators who were going to vote against the Patriot Act. Guess who got anthrax mailed to them? Those 2 senators.
Ha!
And then they immediately flipped their vote. Remember when Chuck Schumer said you can't go against CIA because they have 6 ways of Sunday to get back at you?
Who ended up getting caught for that? Somebody.
Nobody. They tried to prosecute some guy. It was, of course, it was bogus. It was the CIA who did it.
Oh, it kind of just like went away.
Yeah, story. They tried to. There was some Asian guy in some Arizona lab or something that they tried to frame for it, but of course it was obviously didn't do it. Then I think he sued them and got money.
Wow.
Many Democrats have not been persuaded by the hypothesis. Many Democrats. What? Some say they believe. So why do Democrats have a certain view of science? So there's a Democratic science and there's a Republican science? Yes. As Jon Stewart found out, that the lab leak theory is Republican and the zoonotic, the wet market theory is Democrat.
There may never be enough intelligence to draw a conclusion. Kind of like the Trump-Russia collusion thing.
Yeah, that's what they say.
Just because there wasn't enough evidence doesn't mean we can't draw a conclusion.
So now they're saying, we'll never know. We'll never know.
Okay.
The reason why we're never going to know is because if they actually tell you the truth, which is what this was caused from research funded by Dr. Fauci in the United States, then they're responsible for millions and millions of people dying. More people than Hitler, probably.
Yeah. And by the way,
that's why this is happening. They can never say I can't conclusively say if Fauci did this and killed millions and millions of people. I can't say conclusively. So then I guess he didn't do it. Go ahead, Kurt.
Because now what I see is Republican. It's funny to watch the other side of this where they go, oh, they acknowledge the lab leak, and then they go, because China, our enemy China.
Yeah.
I've been seeing that a lot, which is great. Now, it was your own country.
Yeah.
Paid. Like how they sent jobs to China.
That's right.
They sent our gain of function there. And that's whose fault it is the most.
Perusing a database in which genetic sequences of coronavirus are shared. I want to get you...
and China did destroy data because they were being cool to their America. Yeah.
So where does this come from, Kurt? It says perusing a database in which genetic sequences of coronavirus are shared. The researchers discovered that Chinese investigators had quietly uploaded data from their January 1st, 2020 search in the Hunan market after a delay of more than 3 years. The data included all the genetic sequences the investigators collected, not just those from coronaviruses, and it included DNA from a wild species called the raccoon dog, the researchers told. So what they're trying to say is, they've been hiding this evidence that it came from an animal. Why would China do that? Why would China be hiding the evidence that it came naturally in nature? Of course, that the other thing is the thing.
It's a lab. They want us to think that they made it in a lab.
They want us to think they made it in a lab. So
wow.
This is amazing.
Our enemies are so wily. First, Russia blows up its own pipeline.
Yeah.
Then China frames itself. Making a virus.
So that's what this article's saying. It's crazy. This article is one of the craziest articles I've ever read. That finding is at odds with claims from Chinese authorities that wild animals were not sold at the Hunan market. Raccoon dogs are vulnerable to coronavirus infections. 2 decades ago, they may have served as the so-called do you see all these mealy-mouthed words? They may have for the so-called, for the wah-wah, but possible.
Why are they saying the so-called intermediate?
I don't know why.
Is there a possibility there's no such thing
as an intermediate?
Because you just say that
they keep calling it so-called. So is there no such thing as an intermediate host for another coronavirus? They keep calling. The discovery of raccoon dog DNA at the market, if confirmed, would not be definitive proof that the animals were brought to the market harboring the coronavirus that started. So none of this. But the researchers found it striking that the raccoon dog DNA came from a stall that was also positive for SARS-CoV-2, the virus that caused this. Nothing. This is all nothing. Nothing. But doesn't even if they confirm it, doesn't mean anything. But guess what? If I throw around some terms about raccoon DNA and SARS-CoV-2 and the causes and the positive and the.
My girlfriend got COVID, and also she has a cat, and I'm sure you would have found both cat DNA and COVID DNA in the.
So here, I'll be done reading this. This is the last slide. After the scientists discovered the raccoon dog DNA, the newly uploaded sequences were removed from the database. It is not clear why that happened. The scientists are preparing a report of their findings. So you haven't even seen the report yet. They're preparing a report. So this whole article is based on not even a report. Not a paired reviewed article, not an article, not even a report. Where is this coming from? I think this is coming from some stuff some guy said at a meeting.
Well, maybe it's from our intelligence agencies in the community, the ones that are low comp. This is their high comp. This sounds like the kind of horseshit that they give the papers to spew.
Then yes, this exactly sounds like the CIA wrote this article.
I never said that. Then they grill them. They go, well, I never said that. The New York Times just ran with that.
So right here it says, then they try to make you think that they didn't fund it. It says the National Institutes of Health paid for some of EcoHealth Alliance's work in Wuhan, but the NIH officials have repeatedly said the virus is being studied with American taxpayer dollars bore no genetic resemblance to the one that causes COVID.
Well,
hey, wait a minute.
They changed it.
What? In major shift, NIH admits funding risky virus research in Wuhan. What? That's from October 22nd, 2021. A spokesman for Dr. Fauci said he's been entirely truthful, but a new letter belatedly acknowledging the National Institute of Health support for virus and meaning gain of function research.
Right. Virus enhancing. Do you think that sounds better than gain of function?
And here's Fauci's emails showing that he's trying to cover it up.
Wow.
NIH leaders Francis Collins and Anthony Fauci emailed about whether they had funded the Wuhan Institute of Virology before secret call with virologists. In early February 2020, when NIH Director Francis Collins and Tony Fauci should have been focused on managing research to diagnose, treat, and prevent COVID disease, instead, they were focused on covering up the possibility of a lab leak. And here is Fauci lying about funding it.
Dr. Fauci, knowing that it is a crime to lie to Congress, do you wish to retract your statement of May 11th where you claimed that the NIH never funded gain-of-function research in Wuhan?
Senator Paul, I have never lied before the Congress.
Microphone.
Your microphone.
Senator Paul, I have never lied before the Congress, and I do not retract that statement. This paper that you are referring to was judged by qualified staff up and down the chain as not being gain of function.
So what he just did was Senator Paul had a paper signed by 100 or 1,000 doctors say that it is gain of function. Scientists saying it is gain of function what he was funding at Wuhan, because it is. So he held up, he goes, this has been judged by qualified people up and down the chain. Mm-hmm. Realize what he's saying. He's saying this has been judged by people I gave a job to. Qualified people up and down the chain. What chain?
I would like to ask.
Where's this chain at? What chain are you talking about? You mean the chain of people you hired? That chain? The people who work for you? You mean that chain?
It hangs off of my balls.
Well, he just literally saying up and down the chain, the people who all work with me say you're lying. What?
I would have asked him, okay, it's not gain of function. What do you call the research? And then hear that virus enhancing research.
Yeah. So here's
who cares what you call it?
He reads him the definition. Watch.
Let me finish.
You take an animal virus and you increase its transmissibility to humans.
Right.
You're saying that's not gain of function?
Yeah, that is correct. And
that's a lie. So if you take a virus and you increase its infectivity into humans, that's not called gain of function. And he says that's correct. No, he's lying.
It's called gain of Fauci research.
Gain of Fauci. Go to jimmydore.com to see my new stand-up special, COVID Lies Are Funny. For only $10, you get to become a premium member, too. And come see us do our live shows. We're going to be doing stand-up comedy in Milwaukee, Nashville, Honolulu, Los Angeles, Northampton, Massachusetts, Syracuse, New York, Cohoes, New York, Hartford, Connecticut, Baltimore, Maryland, and more. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for all those tickets.